Mm-hmm.
Okay, good morning. I hope everybody's doing well. Welcome to our webinar, Building Resiliency and Networks of Support While Sheltering in Place. And I just wanted to let you know, first of all, a little bit of housekeeping, that this will be recorded. And so there will be chat box access. If you can write things into the chat box, but just make sure that you don't put any personal information that you don't want out there. But it is recorded and will be available. All right. So just like I said, videos and microphones have been shut off, but we were able to use the chat box. And again, please don't write any information and will be recorded, but welcome. So your facilitators today are myself, Joyce Lee, and Lynn Arner, my partner right here. And just to share a little bit about myself, I have been working in Yolo County now for 20 years, working with providers and programs, parents and families in early childhood education. In the last couple of years with QRIS, supporting coaching and assessing and facilitating trainings. I have two boys, a 22-year-old and an 18-year-old. And so I'm delighted to be here today.
And hi, I'm Lynn Arner, and I have been in Yolo County for quite a while, since I went to college at UC Davis in the early 80s. And so I also work as a child development specialist and supporting both child care providers and families, and have been doing that for 30 plus years, so quite a while. So I also am a parent of 4 and a grandmother of 4. And so the older ones are college and above, and my grandchildren are infants, preschoolers, and school age. So good to be here. So you'll see here I have a few social media little posts that hopefully will add a little levity here. So we want to just acknowledge where we are right now. So we're in a time that we've never been in before. We've been thrown into 24/7 parenting, and it can be quite stressful. And on top of it all, we've got the stress of finances. Some of you may have lost wages or even jobs, and we want to just acknowledge that this can be really overwhelming, and we realize that this is a stressful time. And so we will talk a bit about taking care of ourselves and our kids and just connecting with our families. You can go to the next slide. So the first thing that I want to talk about is about taking care of ourselves. So I'm sure you've all seen this image before that talks about fit your own oxygen mask first. And so we're literally putting masks on right now, but this is to remind us that we cannot take care of our children and our families unless we've taken care of ourselves. And so that self-care is going to be something that's critical at this point, and that I wanted to make sure that we discuss first. So we have been kind of tossed into this parenting and schooling from home, and that can be really difficult. And so we wanted to remind you to be kind to yourself, and make sure that you're giving yourself a break, and that you're not feeling that this is the time that I now not only have to be the perfect parent, but I now need to be this terrific teacher as well. So just the reminder to embrace self-care at this point. So when we started talking about how we would talk about this difficult time that we're having, we started to think that probably the best thing to do is to think about what did our kids have in their day already before all the shelter in place. And so the main things that they had was that they had a whole lot of social connection. And so you think about how busy schools are, and there's so many kids and adults all over the place. And so they definitely have a lot of social connection. They also got quite a bit of exercise. They not only had PE and recess, but they also, ran around with their friends and often biked to school or walked to school, those kinds of things. So a lot of exercise. Um, they also had a regular schedule, so a very predictable routine that they followed. And Joyce is going to talk more about that. But that routine, that schedule that they knew really well. And they also had a lot of extracurricular things going on. So their days were quite full. So as you can tell, I haven't mentioned academics. So academics, they say, is only about 20 minutes out of every hour that they spend in class. So don't feel like you need to fill your child's day with academics. There's a lot more that they had in their day, and Joyce is going to talk more about that.
Okay. So Lynn talked about what do our children what do our children get in the day, and so we really want to be able to translate that so that we can look at what they still need and how can we meet that need, because we do have schools and those kinds of environments out there for a reason. So to ask us to duplicate that exactly in our homes really is not something that's realistic, nor do we need to do that. We really need to figure out what are those chunks, what are the fundamental pieces, and how can we meet that need in the homes the best that we can. So I'm going to start out with academics because I know that that is, or I think that that is really on the top of a lot of our minds right now as distance learning is starting. So the first part of academics, and as you see when we talk about all of these, I'm going to really start from this place of how am I feeling? Because I think that's a really important part of working with and being with children is acknowledging how I'm feeling, so and recognizing that everything that we're feeling will really kind of trickle down to children. So if you're feeling stressed, I mean, there's nothing we can do about it, but acknowledging what that is really important. So trying to define where you are and also trying to know, is this a place of comfort for myself? Or am I feeling like I have to do everything? I got to get all this stuff done, every single piece of it. And so sort of looking at that, because I know some people are like, okay, give me my 20 resources. I'm on it. This is where I thrive. And some people are really like, I just need to get the computer on. So kind of recognizing where we are. Along with that, the next part is setting expectations for myself and for my child. The first part is self-reflection again. We always start with ourselves. And the second is letting your child know what these expectations are, what is okay, what's allowed, that type of thing. So when I talk about that, it might be things like, are headphones okay? Is that something we're gonna be able to do? These are little practical things. If there's breaks, which we really do recommend, what are the parameters for those breaks? What, do they take that break in the room where they're doing their distance learning, or is it where they can have really easy access to a little bit of outside? And we'll talk about that, sort of like a recess thing. So thinking about those things, what am I comfortable with? What works for my child? What is going to help them to get back onto that focus? And then balancing the desire and the reality. Depending on the age of your child, this will look really different. Older children are going to they might need some tech support and accountability, but younger children might need us to be there right next to them a little bit more, especially in the beginning. So just kind of balancing that desire and the reality of what needs to take place. And again, I talked about distant learning. Most of us are in that place of distance learning. So again, being very realistic and balanced. I think that if you look out in social media and just emails that our teachers are giving, as much as we are really kind of at a loss, they are too. I think this is uncharted territory, as we keep on saying. I think that there is a lot of grace out there. And so I know that most schools spend at least the first, if not the couple of weeks, really trying to get people comfortable. Even such simple things like getting them online and saying hi to each other. So, knowing that everybody is really giving a lot of grace there. Okay. And then Defining what you can be responsible for. Again, are you what parts of those? Because ultimately at the end of the day, just like if they were in school, you cannot be responsible for what it is they put out there. And just sort of knowing, am I able to, what am I able to do? What am I able to be responsible for? What is my child able to be responsible for? And being okay with that. And then think about, Lynn talked a little bit about this, but thinking about how much time to allocate daily. How much time should we spend? Um, you know, when we really break down the day, school provides a lot of really important aspects. Academics is certainly one of them, but if we really break it down, children are spending a lot of time on one principle or on one concept. So not feeling like you have to give a new concept every single day, and really understanding that the actual amount of time that children are doing academics is not as much as we might think in the day. So, and usually those concepts, again, like I said, are scaffolded, and children are taking lots of breaks and remembering that. Another point that's really important and helps children is setting aside a consistent time. For most families, lots of children, setting aside earlier in the day works well, but it really looks at your individual needs and how your family is doing, especially as many laptops and computers and Chromebooks are going up right now. So really looking at that. Another piece that really might help many of us is setting aside an environment or creating an environment for learning. And don't be daunted by that. It's not a whole room or a whole setup that's set up like a classroom at all, but it's even just a part of a table that's set aside where you can put pencils and whatever it is that's there, and you can keep it there every single day. So a child or children know that this is where I study. And then the other part, of course, at the end that we always are thinking about is reflecting on your day, just for a few minutes. What worked? How did you feel successful? And remember, a lot of times, if you can just come up with one or two things that felt successful, that is a big piece. All right, so that's really what we think about when we talk about academics. So socially, this is a big part of what children and ourselves were getting, and that was really kind of taken away from us. So that's a piece that we want to think about. Again, we can't duplicate what children are getting. And I guess in some ways that's a good thing, but in many, many ways it's really, really tough. So define the social needs that children are getting through their peers versus through family and versus through parents. And children want all types of interactions. It can be trickier if you're suddenly working from home, and so your children have more access to you, so that expectation might be higher, that they might not understand. When I'm on the computer and working, even though you can see me, doesn't mean that I'm accessible at all times. So sort of figuring out those boundaries and setting the expectations. Be prepared to balance a child's need and your ability to provide, like I said, and what you're going to be okay with, right? And then, of course, be prepared and balance using technology for positive. This is a new territory again, but a lot of our social things are happening online right now. So trying to figure out what works and using that for the positive. I guess in some ways, this is really a wonderful opportunity for us to be able to explore that. And after sort of disparaging social media and all of those things as such a negative, hard thing for us to do, looking for the positives, because now there really is an opportunity for us to be able to guide it, to monitor and check in with how kids are doing with it. Okay. Scheduling social things. I know that in our court we have a little one there, and she was asking to do a Zoom call or with one of her friends, a fifth grader, and her mom was telling her, yes, she can do that for you, but I know that she schedules her Zoom calls on Thursdays. And so it kind of sounds funny that we're scheduling Zoom calls for fifth graders, but for this family, it really works for them to do those weekly play dates at a certain time. That might work for you, or your family might have more flexibility. So kind of looking at that. It's also more age dependent. It helps younger children, whereas your teenagers are going to be doing that on their own. But again, having those limitations and parameters really is helpful. Sometimes our kids, especially as they're younger, might need some activities. So maybe you're going to have a Lego Zoom play date or FaceTime play date where you pull out your Legos and everyone's playing with their Legos, and they might be building on their own, but they're still talking with one another. It's sort of like what our older kids are doing with video games. but it's kind of a thing to do that. And for younger kids, sometimes they might need some nudging because this is not a natural thing to have play dates on video. So remembering that just like when you first start out with play dates, they might not be super successful, but just keep on trying because we're in this place for a little while and children do need that, okay? The other part is that you can be as creative as you want. There's plenty of resources that are out there, as I'm sure you're inundated with. But at the same time, it's super okay to be very simple. And again, like with those young children, I think about when simple is just getting on, saying hi, you know, really simple things, or just giving them that simple opportunity is okay. So those are some of the things that we hope will help you in having your child connect. Okay. The other part of what children were getting throughout the day is really exercise, some kind of activity that was out there, and it could be in the form of PE, it could be in the form of a AYSO soccer, whatever that might be, but they were getting exercise. And the goal of that, of course, is so that children can stay healthy, and not just physically healthy, but also emotionally. And we know that when we can get that pent up stuff outside, we're oftentimes much more pleasant. I was just actually talking to Lynn before this and saying, gosh, I'm not getting out enough. And I'm feeling that I'm getting very grouchy. And I know that that connection is there. I just have to get myself out there. So we do know that there is really a connection there. So again, we can't duplicate exactly a lot of times those team sports that kids are having out there, but looking at what do they enjoy, and simplifying some of those things, and then what can they do? What are some things, if soccer was their thing, what can they do with that? I'll go to classes, but there's a lot of, again, online things that they're putting out there where kids are able to sort of look at the videos and follow those classes together and maybe feel like they're not so alone in that. And then one of the things that I'm going to talk about a bit in the next couple of things, but I wanted to talk about with exercise, is that our families, whatever those families are looking like, are together 24/7. And so I know that there's a lot of expectation out there of saying, oh, we've got wonderful family time, lovely family time. And it is true. There is a lot of opportunities for wonderful togetherness in those families that we've never had before, but also understanding that too much togetherness can be really tough, especially depending on the age of your children. So allowing children to have the independence as well as having that together family time. All right. So another thing that our children were getting throughout the day are extracurricular activities in some form. And again, it depends on how old your children are, how involved they might be, but they were getting some sort of activities that were not those academic school things. So in this, again, we may not be able to duplicate exactly. Some things they may still be able to continue, like piano practicing or things like that. But allowing children to choose at this time is really an opportunity. I know that sometimes we might be sick of this, of hearing that this is a place of opportunity, this is a time of opportunity, but it is true in a little bit, because like I was telling people before, I actually started practicing the guitar. I'd never done that before. We have a guitar in our house, and so Fender's offering free classes, and that's what I chose to do. You know, that's what I'm starting. So allowing them to choose. You might need some open-ended choices for children. Another thing is they might need some nudging, because again, I was telling somebody, I'm getting awfully used to just sitting around and working. And so I need some nudging to kind of get up and do some things. And certainly our kids can use that as well. Just like I was talking with the exercise, again, recognizing that yes, it is a wonderful opportunity for family time, but also our children might need to be able to do that independently, and they might want to do some of this stuff independently. So remembering that, okay? All right, so let's look. Lynn, do you want to take this part?
Yeah, so we also recognize that one of the things that the kids also had was that adult. There's usually one adult in the classroom, and so that adult to follow. And that adult usually has some very clear expectations for kids because they're there with multiple children. They really needed to have some very clear boundaries and expectations for the kids. And so those behavioral guidelines we may need to be pretty clear about as well. Like Joyce was saying, what's expected when mom's, on the computer or on the phone, or, and then, if the parent is busy, what's the expectation for the child, and that they may not know that. The other thing they had was they had their peers to look to say, what am I supposed to be doing right now? I look around and what are the other people doing? They don't have anyone to follow right now. So, and this is new. And so if they don't know what's expected of them at the moment, they don't have anyone to kind of look to. So they're going to be looking to you to say, what's next? What am I supposed to do now? And so we just also wanted to remind you about just really focusing on the feelings, the family, and the fun. And so, acknowledging how we are feeling right now. This can be a really difficult time, and that we can, say to our kids, I know that this is so hard because you've never had to do this before. And, it may be scary, or it may be overwhelming, or whatever it is, and to really acknowledge that, and then just to connect. Our time with our kids is the most important thing that we can give them at this point.
Another thing that comes up that we think is really helpful, we were really trying to pull out some things that might be very helpful for families. And daily routines, we really feel are a strong part of it. Sometimes when we see that word, some of us, depending on our personality, may feel like, oh my goodness, wait, scheduling. I'm not sure if this is something I want to do, or if this is who I am. And so it really, again, depends on your personality, what this looks like. But daily routines, in what we're talking about, is really something. Predictability is a word that comes to mind, anchors, and I'll talk about that. So let's look at it that way. When we talk about routines, why do we have those? Why do we keep on saying that they're important? Lynn and I both do a lot of trainings for teachers, and we talk about the daily routine a lot, even for every single subject that comes up in working with teachers, especially when it comes up with positive discipline, behavior management. Routines are important. So the first part of it is reflecting on what anchors you throughout a day. And usually if you think about 3 or 4 anchors throughout the day, what you can count on. So you get up in the morning. For me, it's like I got a shower to feel awake. I need to have my coffee, and then I can sort of start my day. And then I do have a bite to eat, sort of in that middle. And then there's a time when I kind of end working. So there's a couple of things that are there that really kind of anchor my day. And then I fit things in between those. So something as simple as that, I know some people are a lot more, they have things set in place more, and that's okay. But really just sort of knowing how that day goes. The reason why it's so important is that uncertainty is really tough. And so we are in overall umbrella, we're in a time of uncertainty. So this can give us some control. It can help our children to sort of feel some control in it. It's also very efficient. It prioritizes what is important and has to get done in a day. So maybe I don't get the 8 things that I needed to do, but I do know we got fed, we brushed our teeth, whatever those things might be. And it gives us, it saves us time because we don't have to think about those things, because when it's a routine, there's sort of no-brainers that happen. It gives us more energy so that we can really think and use that brain power for other things that might need it throughout the day. And especially with young children, when they can get into the habit of those things, it really helps, because the other stuff, there are going to be so many pieces of the day that will be hard, especially the younger your children are. And certainly even for our older kids right now, there are lots of hard parts of the day. But if we can get this routine in, you can have some more energy for those things. It gives predictability and structure, like I said. And when we do that, it lowers anxiety, especially for our kids, because they know, at least I know what's going to happen in a day in those anchors. And then we know what needs to happen. And when there are aspects in our day where we don't have to make a decision, then it just makes it easier for those times. The other part is that it keeps us healthy. A lot of our routines are centered around healthy habits. And so again, this is a time where it's easy to sort of let a lot of things go. And I think it's okay to let a lot of things go. But at the same time, if there are certain just 3 or 4 things throughout the day, those are usually things that will keep us healthy like the brushing the teeth and like the getting up at a certain time and so forth. The other part is that it builds momentum and it can build a sense of accomplishment and even of success. I've had lots of big surgeries throughout my life, and I know that when I recuperate, just the fact that when I can get from, okay, I'm getting up and I'm brushing my teeth, to, okay, I got up, brushed my teeth, I took a walk around the room, or I took a walk. These are real simple things. But after having done them, I feel real successful and feel like, okay, I can make to the next small step, maybe tomorrow. So building that and building a sense of accomplishment is what it can do. So how can we do these routines? Really start simple is a lot of times what I say. Many of us already have those routines in place, and that's great. And maybe once that those are working, we can build some more things into it or not. It depends on how it is for you. Another part of the success of daily routines is a schedule I've come up with too strict or non-existent, right? Structured days. When we think about routines, we think about structure, but we also want to think about, is it working for me? The best part of routines is regular meal times and bedtimes. Those are kind of really the big pieces of it. And it doesn't have to be to the T, to the minute. It's sort of, consistently what we have, because that's what kids were getting in a regular day for the most part. To have expectations in that, and to know like what will happen. And so letting children know what those expectations are. Within that, providing for flexibility, knowing that, again, yes, these are the increments of times when things will happen, but there are times where those can change, and that happens in a regular day as well as things come up. Another successful part of daily routines is incorporating your children and your whole family in planning them, especially because this is our routine. It's not just my routine. Thinking about weekends, I know that every day is running into each other these days, but sort of thinking about, can I pull out weekends and make them a little bit different, or maybe just like they were in a regular time that we were in. And finally, of course, reviewing the routine from time to time and reflect if it's working, not just working for me, but also working for the whole family and working for the child. One thing that we love to give as advice for teachers is to putting visual cues out there. And I think this works for families too. And what I mean by visual cues is just post it, put it up there so that everybody can be reminded of it. Another thing that some of you might consider that I do think is helpful is maybe every night making a doable to-do list for the next day. And when I on purpose say a doable to-do list. So just a couple things that I really need to get done tomorrow, or as a family we need to get done, or with your child that needs to get done. And you can make that short list and refer back to it the next day. So those are just some of the things around a daily routine. If you have any questions, you can type them in the chat box. And then we're going to go through some resources as well, and we'll have those available, or you can absolutely email us. But some of the questions that we've been getting is, will children be behind if we don't get all the work done? And that's one of the questions that we've been asked a lot. Lynn, do you want to take that one?
Did you have the answer to that one?
Oh yeah, I can talk about that a lot. Well, so, we do worry about that a lot. And I think that's something that's out there a lot because we're talking about the academics. And one of the things I want to share with you is that, number one, the amount of time that they spend in academics, as Lynn and I both talked about, it's not as long as we might think of it. But at the same time, absolutely, we're not going to just put aside, oh, children not doing much in school, because they are getting a lot done. However, I think being reminded, number one, that this is the end of the year. So that's a big thing that we have to remind ourselves. A lot of the end of the year things are spent in non-academic things. So that's one of the things. The other part is that learning is scaffolded. So they have spent the year learning concepts, and they will again in years to come back to those concepts. And so remembering those pieces that we go back and forth, we always go back and visit those fundamentals that we're learning. The other part that we want to think about is that and we really in early childhood are really focused on this. Are children ready to learn? That's our biggest piece, right? Because if you're ready to learn, you can learn almost anything. And so what we really want to do for children is to continue that habit of of learning in some form. And so even if they're learning just one or two things today, it's that exercising of your brain. It's that thing of, okay, here's something I have to do, and here's how I'm going to do it. But that's more of what we believe is more important than the actual pieces that they might be getting, because those will fall in place. Children want it, it's important more that they think of this as a positive experience, at least for a portion of the day. And so that's kind of our answer to it.
I've also heard a lot of people talking about right now, like kids may not learn the exact subject content that the teachers had in mind, but that they are learning so much in this time about, you know, how to entertain themselves, how to, you know, we're learning a lot about communication in our families. How do we, you know, how do we say what we expect from each other, and, you know, make sure that we're being clear about that. So there's so many other things that kids are learning at this point that are really life skills, that it may not be, you know, what the teachers had planned, but it is a lot of learning that's happening, and, you know, kids are able to learn whatever's put in front of them, and so I think we just need to be, you know, get some ideas and try out some things, and it is a lot of trial and error.
Yeah. So another question we get asked often in some form is, what if I can't get my child to sit in front of the computer and do the actual work? What if they're just refusing to do the work? And that's really a legitimate question that I think we are seeing from house to house, right? It's a scenario we can kind of see. And I think our answer to that would be just like in regular parenting times. I think one of the things to remind ourselves is that as parents, we do have a lot of skill sets of things that we had been doing in our regular problem solving. And so this is kind of a problem that's come off. And so how would we approach that, right? Again, helping them step by step in seeing the positives of it, trial and error, like Lynn talked about, setting up we talked about expectations a lot throughout this webinar, setting up my expectation and then talking with the child about what the expectation is for them. And remember, younger the child, keeping it pretty simple. The harder the issue is for whatever age, again, keeping those expectations simple is really a part of it. And then again, children seeing natural consequences. Those are harder right now, which is good and bad. It's harder because a lot of times as parents, it doesn't really help us because they're harder to see those consequences. But at the same time, again, like Lynn said, this is an opportunity for children to kind of learn about what grace looks like. And they're getting a lot of that through their teachers and their admin, but maybe sometimes they need to see that pointed out. Right? And so again, the reward at the end might not be that they did the 10 math problems, but the reward may be at the end that they're seeing a character thing that's out there. And so kind of keeping that global perspective a little bit.
Yeah, and Joyce, I wanted to mention that I think that when young kids are objecting, you know, and they're having a really hard time, that there's often, you know, some disappointment or, you know, some, you know, whatever emotion is behind that. And that wondering with kids, you know, I wonder, you know, what you're feeling right now. I wonder what's going on. I wonder why that's so hard for you. I wonder, and that wondering with them gives them a chance to kind of think a bit about how they're feeling and express that. And the other thing is to sort of dream with them, you know, that, you know, wow, wouldn't it be great if you could just, you know, sit in your room all day long and you didn't have to, you know, come out and do your, you know, schoolwork, or you didn't have to, you know, whatever the expectation is. And so I think to really, you know, give ourselves a little bit of time where we just reflect with our kids and you know, wonder with them and dream with them, and it gives them a little bit of chance to say, okay, you know, yeah, that I expressed my feelings and now we can move forward. So
Okay. And our last question, I know we're running out of time, but we've gotten various forms of this one as well. If we've started to implement something new, like a big bed or maybe toilet learning, if you've got really little ones, do we continue during this time because it's so different? And I think my answer to that is absolutely try. Again, it goes back to the basic parenting skills of try. We try these things, we try Trial and error is a big part of it, with the umbrella understanding that we are under a lot more stress. And so that's going to come out in different ways. And so sometimes these things might be a little bit more challenging, but at the same time, we're also home all the time. And a lot of these things are tough because we're not home and we're scheduled to go out and we have to go out and do things, but we don't have that anymore. So we have a little bit more we have a lot more actually luxury in being flexible with that routine that we talked about. So maybe this is an optimal time to do some of those things. So again, try it, and being really in tune with yourself and with your child and seeing, okay, is this really stressful and not working? Then I'm going to back off. Or, hey, whoa, this is a great opportunity to do that. So I would say our answer would be just like in regular times, really trust the instincts that you have. Okay. Okay, so Lynn, if you could, we don't have a lot of time, so I'm gonna just kind of fly through the next resource slides, and if you can let everybody know our next webinar.
Yeah, so our next time that we'll be meeting is actually going to be on Thursday. We're going to be meeting at 5 p.m. Is that right, Joyce? Mm-hmm. And we'll be talking about teens. And so if you have older children and what we've talked about hasn't been specific to teens, we really hope that you'll join us and be able to talk about some of those difficulties that we have specifically with our teens. So here's some of the resources. So these are just some of the mental health or just our basic needs that might not be being met. And so always remember, you can call 211 if you have anything that you're looking for, and they'll direct you.
So we have these different resources, and again, we're not going to go through every single one because of time, but this webinar is recorded. So you'll have access to those, and you can also email one of us, and we'll put our emails up there, and we will definitely send the resources out to you. And these are ones that Lynn and I, really our team, put together, as there's many resources out there, but these are consistently very good, and so we do recommend them. And some of them have outstanding Spanish translation, which we're really appreciative of. Okay. We did that already. And here's our contacts, and you can email either of us. We really appreciate you listening in, and we hope to do more of these. So if there's topics or things that you want to hear about, please let us know as well.
Yeah. So remember to be kind to yourself. We did say this is a very unprecedented time, and that what we know is that our kids' memories are not going to be about that math assignment that they had to hop on and do. It's really going to be about the time that they spent with us.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.